The moment narcissists fear most, Jung explained. There's a moment no one warns you about. It doesn't look dramatic. No screaming, no revenge, no public collapse. But psychologically, it's an earthquake. Carl Jung discovered something that quietly terrifies narcissistic personalities. Not because it makes the empath cruel, but because it makes them unreachable. And narcissists cannot survive what they cannot reach. This moment happens when the empath is no longer wounded. Not bitter, not vengeful, not hardened. Just done. Not angry. Finished. Jung described this as an alchemical shift, a psychic transformation where pain is not expelled, but absorbed, digested, and transmuted into strength. He called it psychological alchemy. And once this shift happens, the empath doesn't become dangerous in the way people expect. They become untouchable. The lie about empathy. Most people misunderstand empaths. They think empathy is weakness. Sensitivity is fragility. Kindness is naivety. Jung saw the opposite. He believed certain individuals live from what he called authentic being, a psyche rooted in lived truth, not performance. Narcissists, however, live from persona, masks, reflections, borrowed energy, external validation. Where the empath feels deeply, the narcissist performs deeply. And that difference changes everything when the empath reaches their limit. A narcissist feeds on reaction, admiration, confusion, fear, emotional chaos. Not because they enjoy cruelty, but because they are empty. The empath, meanwhile, was never empty. Just leaking. Leaking forgiveness. Leaking chances. Leaking understanding. Until one day, they stop. And that's when the power reverses. The most dangerous transformation. Jung warned that the most powerful psychological shift is not rage. It's integration. When the empath integrates what they were taught to suppress anger, boundaries, discernment, self-authority, they don't become cruel. They become clear. Jung called this enantiodromia, the tendency of something pushed to the extreme to transform into its opposite. Excessive empathy becomes sovereignty. Endless giving becomes self-possession. Silence becomes presence. And presence is terrifying to anyone who survives on manipulation. Here's what narcissists never expect. The empath doesn't fight back. They withdraw access. No more explaining. No more defending. No more proving reality. Just an internal shift. And suddenly manipulation has nowhere to land. This is the beginning of individuation, becoming whole. Not nice. Not morally superior. Whole. And wholeness does not negotiate with dysfunction. That's why a fed-up empath isn't loud. They recalm. They don't expose. They don't chase closure. They simply stop participating in the illusion. And illusion is the narcissist's oxygen. The 3 stages of the empath is awakening. Jung never used the word empath the way we do today. But he absolutely described the type. A psyche deeply attuned to emotional undercurrents. Responsive, meaning-oriented, sensitive to subtle shifts. He observed that these individuals evolve in 3 stages. Most never leave the first. Many get trapped in the second. Very few reach the third. And narcissists fear the third more than exposure. Stage 1. The unconscious empath. They feel everything, but understand nothing. They absorb moods. Internalize blame. Confuse intensity with intimacy. Mistake trauma bonds for love. Boundaries feel cruel. Self-sacrifice feels noble. If I love harder, they'll change. Jung would say this empath is carrying the shadow of others, holding what others refuse to face. And narcissists sense this instinctively, like a predator sensing an open nervous system. The empath mirrors, listens, validates. But what they think is connection is projection. Eventually, empathy without selfhood becomes exhaustion, and exhaustion forces awareness. Stage 2. The wounded awakening. This is the most painful phase. The empath realizes, I've been feeding something that feeds on me. This is the encounter with their own shadow. The anger they suppressed. The boundaries they were told were selfish. The instincts they were taught to doubt. They oscillate compassion and rage, clarity and guilt, leaving and staying. This is when narcissists panic. Because awareness weakens the spell. Gaslighting intensifies. Victimhood deepens. Affection alternates with cruelty. Not strategy. Panic. But seeing the poison isn't the same as neutralizing it. That comes next. Stage 3, the sovereign empath. This is rare. The sovereign empath does not lose empathy. They master it. They no longer merge emotionally. They observe. They speak once, clearly, without over-explaining. They don't seek to be understood. They understand themselves. Anger becomes discernment. Sensitivity becomes perception. Compassion becomes choice. And here's what narcissists cannot tolerate. No reaction. No emotional supply. No defense. No collapse. Just presence. Anchored people cannot be manipulated. The narcissist feels the shift instantly. And suddenly, they are alone with themselves. The RISE method, Jung's psychological rebirth. Real change doesn't happen through affirmations. It happens when the psyche reorganizes itself. This transformation follows 4 movements. R. Recognition. The empath stops romanticizing suffering. Patterns replace excuses. They ask, why am I still here? Confusion collapses. Responsibility returns. Energy begins to reclaim itself. I. Integration. They integrate their disowned traits. Anger, refusal, the capacity to walk away. Repressed anger becomes compliance. Integrated anger becomes protection. Predictability disappears. Manipulation loses leverage. S. Separation. Not physical distance. Psychic withdrawal. They stop explaining themselves to someone committed to misunderstanding them. Projections dissolve. Energy returns home. The narcissist experiences something worse than rejection. Irrelevance. E. Embodiment. They don't think differently. They exist differently. Their voice slows. Their nervous system stabilizes. They no longer rush to fill silence. The self, not ego, becomes the center. Manipulation no longer registers. The empathic warrior. Jung believed the goal of growth was not goodness. It was wholeness. Goodness without strength collapses. Strength without empathy corrupts. But when empathy and strength integrate, an empathic warrior emerges. Not a fighter, not a victim, not a savior. Whole. They don't expose narcissists. They let irrelevance expose them. They don't dominate. They don't chase validation. They don't need to win. Their reality is internally confirmed. Narcissists eventually leave not because they are defeated, but because there is nothing left to extract. No guilt, no admiration, no emotional turbulence, just grounded presence. And presence cannot be consumed. The final truth. Empathy was never meant to be endless giving. It was meant to be perception. The empath's sensitivity wasn't a flaw. It was training. Training to see beneath masks. Training to feel subtle shifts. Training to recognize when something is no longer alive. Once that training completes, the empath doesn't return to innocence. They return to truth. And truth does not shout. It does not chase. It does not convince. It stands. If you've watched this far, this wasn't entertainment. It was recognition. And recognition is the first step toward freedom.